Maybe if we looked at the job like church,
Okay, wait a minute.
walk with me. We don't look at how you dress for church as a code switch. It's just appropriate for
For the setting.
the setting. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to Care to Elaborate with Taylor and Travarus. My name is Travarus. I'm one of your co-hosts. I am also here with
Taylor, your other co-host.
and today we're going to talk about code switching. For those who do not know what code switching is, let me give you a brief synopsis. Code switching is when you are in a space professionally and you decide to shift your tone, your body language, or even the way that you may dress based on the environment that you're going into. What I saw when I was growing up was my mom would put on her white voice if she was on the phone with the bill collectors or somebody, and I didn't know what it was at the time, but it's way more prevalent now as we are into professional spaces and as Black folks, Latinx folks are getting into these big buildings in corporate and tech adjacent roles, trying to find your way. And some people think that the way in is through shifting your tone. But before we get into all those things, Taylor, how you doing?
I am doing well. For everyone who's watching, on YouTube, I just got my hair done, and so I just feel great. I feel like when you get your hair done, it just changes your mood. I feel alive. I feel happy. I'm exuberant. Let's go with that.
Yeah,
So,
see?
so yes, I feel wonderful. How are you today, Travarus?
I feel good too. I feel like I'm going into a week that's going to bring a lot of prosperity, a lot of connection, a lot of networking, which is good. And I love to be able to be in spaces where I have things to look forward to. But also, my daughter's growing up and doing all types of cool stuff and
She is really
requiring
cool.
me to be next to her as much as she needs me to. And she tells me where she wants me to be. So,
I love that. I boss my dad around too. That's lovely.
yeah. Yeah, it's just the beginning. It is
Oh yeah,
just
it's gonna get wait till she turns like 16. Good luck.
Oh my God. I hope by then we're like homies and she tells me all the good stuff so I don't have to hear about the bad stuff. You get what I'm saying? Like I want to
Yeah.
have a relationship where she's not afraid to tell me the things that she may be ashamed of.
There's nothing better than the love of a dad. Maybe the love of a mom, but
you know, you know how y'all get with your moms.
yeah.
All they did was bring you into the world. That's all. No big
I
deal.
be bickering with my mom, but shout out if you listening, girl, shout out to you.
If you listening, girl, shout out to you.
I don't even know if she know about the podcast app. But I'll send her the YouTube link.
Okay, let's get into code switching. So Taylor, I gave my definition of what I thought code switching was. Maybe that's from a millennial perspective. Do you have a definition or a explanation to what you think code switching is for Gen Z?
I think it's the same thing that you mentioned. I think you talked about switching your tone or switching your clothes. I think
Mhm.
also it's just in switching your personality. I've
Oh,
seen people completely change like what are supposed to be inherent or innate character traits to appease other people. That's one thing where I'm like, I am worrisome because if you are changing some things that are inherently a part of you, that can be concerning. And so, for example, I think about maybe some people who are LGBTQIA plus
mhm.
going into the workspace. Maybe they don't feel comfortable to display that part of themselves or talk about that part of themselves. And so therefore that part of themselves just while they're at work may be pushed to the back or like
Right.
it may disappear momentarily. And I hope we're getting to a place in society where we can be more accepting of others who are different than us, but I can understand why sometimes people do that, but I just hate that that's even a thing that people have to do.
When it comes to the LGBTQIA plus community, to me, that's like a self-preservation
Mm,
and a something that's required in order for protection, some type of
right.
protection for themselves. Do you think overall code switching is an inherent protection so they don't compromise what they think people won't accept of who they are?
For sure. I mean, I don't think I would code switch if I truly felt comfortable just, saying my twang and being my southern black self. But
Mm-hmm.
I think it is a mechanism of protection solely because when you walk into some of these spaces, people automatically have a presumption of you based off of how you look, how you appear to them. And so I think that when there are other aspects of your identity that may be not viewed in a good light, that you try to do what you can to, appease other people.
Yeah. So, okay, we agree there. Would you say they should do code switch?
I don't really do it so much anymore. I would say when
Hmm.
I was younger, that was something that I did consistently. And I think
How
code
old?
switch,
16?
like 16,
Because
even going into
how old are
college.
you? Because you're not very
Okay.
old
Not all
now.
right. Yeah, this is a Gen Z versus millennial podcast. So yes, I'm Gen Z 23. But like early date, like 16 to 21, maybe. It
Hmm.
wasn't until I felt comfortable in the space, and this is probably because I do DEI also. I heavily have to speak to that because I am a
Hmm.
diversity, equity, and inclusion practitioner. I can't walk around telling people to go into work authentically and not code switch if I'm code switching. So
Valid.
yeah, so that's when I was like, okay, if this is something I'm going to go into this, if this is my life's passion and my life's mission to do this work, then I can't be code switching anymore. I need to be who I am. And I think also another thing I want to talk about is code switching again. It can be various things. I mean, I used to think that if I'm going into an interview, I need to code switch and
Hmm.
change my hair. I remember I was
Mm.
going to an event and I was talking to one of my mentors at the time. And I had, what did I have? I had like blonde hair, like real blonde, platinum blonde, highlights type stuff. And I
Hmm.
was telling her I was worried about going to the event or the conference that I was going to with that hair because I didn't want people to assume something of me. And she was, again, she was a DEI practitioner. So she was like, girl, what? Like, don't,
Yeah.
yeah. But to your point, yes, I used to. Now I don't, or try not
Oh,
to.
yeah. Another great point. It's hard to tell people to show up as their full authentic selves if you're not being authentic yourself. And that goes to how I feel. I don't code switch, not
You sure don't.
intentionally.
Travarus
I
be
don't.
himself every day.
But I'm very clear on that is not sustainable for everybody. I don't know at what point, but I never put up a guard or a representative at work as much. I've always had the ability to be myself at all times. Now I sanitize some of the criticism, or when we're raising conversations about what could be better, I don't give you the unadulterated truth because I'm not an idiot. But I am who I am on this podcast as I am on the basketball court, as I am in the boardroom. Like I had the ability to kind of carry that with me thus far. Now, am I a CEO of a company? No. Am I an executive? No. So one could argue that maybe me being this way may have helped me back a little bit. Who knows?
Mm.
But I would also say to that I would much rather be who I am and not have to worry about who I interface with and who I've told them I am than not be who I am. Like I really want to stand on being Travarus at all times, whatever that means. That evolves, but I would much rather be me than somebody else.
So, have you embodied this value your entire life? Like, have you truly not code switched your entire life, or was there a point in your life or professional journey where you're like, I'm not doing this anymore?
So that's a really great question. Let me start with aesthetics because you'll see me before you hear me.
Yeah, you are tall, black man. Oh,
I've always dressed the part.
that.
Always, right? So whatever space I was in, I was always dressed up appropriately and sharply. I think already that's a bit disarming. Once you see me dressed a certain way, you give me a bit of credence. It's like, oh, okay. So I think that I didn't have to be super stuffy in my language and have to code switch as much. My second career was education. What I found in education that my superpower was that I can talk to students like students. I
Mm,
didn't talk to them like the rest of the administration did. I didn't have to say, I didn't use a jargon. I was obviously educated, but I was talking to the students like, because we listened to the same music. We were doing some of the same things. So it really wasn't that big of a gap culturally, even with, black, white, Hispanic, it didn't matter. I was able to be myself. And then talking to administrators in that space, I was able to translate for the students. Here's
mm.
what they want. So the super duper professional speak wasn't necessary. And I also began to get appreciation for understanding the culture
Right.
in education. So by the time I got to corporate, and I think most people start at corporate when they start their code switching situation, I was already well versed in how to navigate it. So to say that I never code switched is not, I don't want to say that's true, but I've always been able to be myself through whatever means and journey that I've taken. I'm not sure how I was out of college, but in every space that I was in, I was able to like be myself.
And that's highly impressive. And when you told the story about conveying what the students were saying, I don't think there ever was truly a code switch. I just think to me it's representative of this is Travaris, and
Hmm.
Travaris is talking to the students one way, and he can just convey that messaging to the administration in a way that's professional, but it's still Travaris at the core.
Yeah.
And I think that that is a big thing that a lot of people just cannot do or hesitant to do or afraid to do, and it's inspiring that you've been able to do that and stay that way throughout your career.
And I've told Taylor this. I don't think that some of the things that I've experienced are 100% relatable. And this is one of those things. I am also able to unpack why is it different from me versus everyone else. So I can understand how to, I don't want people to quote unquote be like me. I want you to know how, I want you to show your work. If you end up trying not to code switch, why don't you? What's the benefit for you? And why do you think that it's not necessary for you? Because for most people it is. And so that gives us to our next point. Do we think code switching is necessary? In certain situations, because of the way that the world looks at us, I think that in order to get into a door, it is. How do you feel? Talk to me.
Ugh.
Nah, don't give me the idealistic
I
what
mean,
we want the world to be.
okay,
Do you
because
think it is necessary?
I was gonna do both,
Okay.
but unfortunately the way that the world works right now, I think the answer is yes. In a perfect world, I do not think that should be a thing. How I think one thing that I have to call out is, the difference between being yourself and presenting authentically and professionalism. And I
Mm,
think there is a line there, but you can walk the line. So for example, I feel like I present as a professional.
mhm.
However, in
You
some
do.
okay, I hope the audience agree. Leave a comment down below if you agree. But in some cases at work, so since I again present as a professional, when I go into work, I have that mindset. But again, here's me like mixing and mingling my authenticity with my professionalism. I may go into a meeting and say something after the meeting, like when we get feedback, I'll be like, yeah, we ate that. Like we ate that up. But
Okay.
you're right. But at the same time, that's still me, but it still
Yeah.
can be you see what I'm saying? Like
Yeah, I see.
there's a way
But
to mix
also,
the things a little bit.
there's absolutely a way to mix the things. Like, there's always a time and place for things. And I think that's what we want to make loud and clear also.
Mm,
There's a time and place for everything. There's a time and place for you to drop your shoulders and you feel like you can speak a certain way. There's a time and place where you can wear sweatpants. It may not be the office, you know what I
yeah,
mean?
for
So
sure.
I wouldn't necessarily say that because I wear sweatpants 80% of the time at home, that when I go to work and I don't wear sweatpants as a code switch. No, that is a reasonable adjustment.
Yeah.
So I think for you, maybe that's a reasonable adjustment to make sure that you are on for your presentation. And then when the camera's off, it's like, "Yeah, we bodied that, right? Like we killed that." So I think that the mix with when being intentional is authentic. Now, if you the camera off and you talking about how well you did, it's like that was exquisite. Like, all right, Taylor,
Yeah, like
that, it's
let's
over.
chill.
The presentation's over. Nobody's here. You know what I mean? I think that would be the like ultimate like code switch. Like you can take it down now.
And, I agree with that. And I think I have a question for you just
Okay.
regarding. So we're talking about how how code switching may be needed in times. Do you
Yeah.
think there will come a point where we will be comfortable enough to not code switch as frequently?
No. I
Uh,
think the word that you use, comfortable, and I add another word, confident. Most people aren't comfortable or confident. So folks assimilate to the places where they are, like where they reside.
Yeah.
So some things would be frowned upon if you pluck them from their environment, you put them in a different environment, and you said to stay yourself, right? Let's say that the person that you know from your hometown, if you took them from their environment, you literally placed them in our office, and you just like be yourself, it wouldn't be taken, it wouldn't be accepted
That's true.
because you can't take somebody from the raw habitat and put them in another one and just say be.
They have
What
to evolve over time.
That's the thing. There's evolution and you learn the spaces and how to communicate. That's why I never wanted to say like I didn't code switch off the rip. Maybe I did, but I've also learned along the way how my inherent personality lends itself to the spaces I've been in. And maybe even still, there's been times where I've been overdressed for regular situations. But if I took that same outfit and put it in the professional context, I'll be regularly dressed. You
Right.
get what I'm saying? So I've always kind of been able to straddle both sides at the same time. I first met some of my best friends. They're like, "Why are you using these big ass words? What's a cornucopia, bro? Like, what are you what are you
Another
talking about?
cornucopia.
Or a plethora, right? Like these words
Mm,
I was using when I was younger. They're like,
right.
you don't have to do this. Yeah, why don't you just say a lot? Like you don't have to do that. So my friends, if they listen to this, they'll laugh because that's really how I am. That lends itself even better if I'm giving a presentation, right?
Right.
If I'm using words like plethora, cornucopia, or I mean, it's like it shows range for whatever reason. So not only do I not have to code switch in a professional setting as much, I probably do too much at home in my regular life.
Mm,
So I don't want you to see that one side is more than the other. Like, nah, my wife probably like, why are you don't gotta give me context for everything. Like you could just say the thing. You
yeah.
don't have to go into like, let me tell you why this is the thing. And like, so nah, maybe I do too much at home.
Code switch at home. I think mm, for everyone who's listening, I am very Southern. Travarus says I'm not as Southern,
I
but
don't.
I talk in very much so Southern dialect. I'm using what AAV. I'm
Mm-hmm.
saying finna ain't, but what you at home? No, when I'm at home, I be saying all types of stuff. So I, I think I do code switch more at work because I don't walk into work saying I'm finna go to the bathroom. But if I'm at home,
Okay.
I'm finna be like, y'all finna get on my nerves. Like I'm finna leave.
I think the thing that I omit at work is I'm lying. I'm about to lie.
Oh,
I was gonna say that I omit curse words. I don't. I curse in meetings,
oh,
but I don't. Within reason. Like, do I curse with stakeholders? Nah, right? Like they don't have no they have no connection to who I am, and I'm
yeah,
like, yeah. So like, I don't do that. But the at home piece is really interesting because I think that the reason why like I said, I'm able to straddle both sides is because I may just be normally just a bit too. I might be too wordy in general.
yeah. You just talk like that.
Yeah, so that's me. But I want to shift gears a bit to ask this question because I think that it's really important for people who are listening to this. If you're in college or you're in your first professional job, you may be asking yourself, if I code switch, am I losing my sense of self?
Mm.
What is your answer to that?
I think it depends on how much you code switch, and I think it goes back to what I mentioned earlier. If you are code switching to the point where you are becoming a whole different version
Right.
of yourself, I
Right.
think that's when you need to ask yourself, is the space you're in a space you even want to be in? Because
Mm-hmm.
why are you so uncomfortable to the point that you have to completely change yourself? Now, again,
Right.
we talked about how, professionalism. I think, I'm be honest, professionalism was created for the white man
Talk about
because
it.
when corporate America started, there were no black people in corporate. There were no people of color in corporate. And unfortunate as that is, but when we look for professionalism, that inherently already strips, parts of who we are. And
Yep.
I think we have to take that term back and, make it our own. And I think it is evolving and changing nowadays as again Gen Z comes into the workforce and we are just like we're not about to do all this crazy stuff that y'all want us to do, or we were not going to talk all just robotically. Because
Hmm.
what are you talking about? Like sometimes when you code switch to the point of you don't know where you are or who you are in that moment, I think you can get lost in yourself, if that makes sense. So like it
Yeah.
becomes incredibly taxing to go to work each day because you're literally putting on a whole nother person. And then at
Facts.
5 o'clock, you got to take that person off. But the next day you got to put that person back on. And who are you?
Yeah. At that point, you do not know who you are.
Right.
I have a question, a Gen Z question.
Yes.
I think that the evolution of Gen Z is rooted squarely in, at least in the corporate spaces that I've observed, is squarely rooted in I'm going to be myself,
Yes.
right? Do you think? What do you think is the next iteration of that? Do you think that
Mhm.
generation, the next generation after you, snaps back to traditional professionalism, or do you think that it evolves further from what y'all are providing?
Have you seen Generation Alpha is not child? No. Them kids are not about to, no. No, I feel like it's going to evolve further. If Gen Alpha goes back to traditional standards, I would be heavily surprised.
Mm,
I think it's going to evolve just a bit further. I think we're kind of getting to the point where it's at its peak,
yeah.
where people are wearing what they want to work. People are talking a little bit more in their own language. I still think we do have, depending on what industry you're in, certain stipulations where people may or may not do that. But I think it's evolving and I think it will continue to evolve a little bit
Mm-hmm.
more. But I do think this idea of professionalism will still always be around somewhat.
All right, I have an example, and I want you to respond to this example based on that question. So you're saying that there may be an evolution from your generations. I'm going to be who I am to Gen Alpha's continuation of that.
Right.
I also think two things you got to consider:
Hmm.
the power state, the people, the powers that be, are boomers, right? It's increasing to millennials.
And
The
Gen
ear
X. Don't forget about them. They just forgotten
Yeah.
generation.
The early sector of any generation that enters a power state is traditional. Does that make sense?
Yes.
The earliest amount of people that enter the powers that be of any generation are going to be traditional because they
Yeah,
fit
because
the
they don't know
mold.
anything else.
They fit the mold of what the generation before them articulates as acceptable, right? So going backwards, with Gen Alpha being another conjugation of what you all are doing, do you think that the people in power will allow them to remain that way, or will they try to call them back a little bit?
I mean, I think the people in power are already trying to call Gen Z back anyway.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
I think that there will always be, as long as people who do not align with what we're saying, as long as those people are around, I think there will always be people that try to rein in these types of ideals or the actions of the younger generation. But I mean, at the end of the day, do we care?
You have to care. You
Do
have to
we?
care. You do. Because there are things, we talked about this also, and I'm going to get back to code switching in a second. I think this is a really good intergenerational conversation because return to office, right? And you asked me, working from home is a part of the I am who I am bag. I do better working here.
Mhm.
It's flexibility, all those things. They are systematically stripping that away from certain places. At least you got to go back to the office 3 times a week. So the flexibility that some
Mhm.
people have enjoyed is being erased. What also is erased? How you have to dress when you get. You got to show up a certain way when you go to the office. You can't just show up with like I say your at home sweatpants, right? So I think the powers that be are it matters because they dictate the
Yeah.
pace of what's happening, and also they determine who gets promoted.
That's what I was gonna say. Who did they signing the paychecks?
Yeah. So if your brand isn't necessarily accepted, and it's like I mentioned to you before, It's not about the work. You can be a rock star at doing your job, but how you show up, everything else matters. So you can
Mm.
not be on the brink of losing your job, but you might not be on the list for promotions. And that's why I mentioned, you know what I mean? So
So this brings up an interesting point, an interesting thought for me, because I had this conversation with someone yesterday who is Gen Z, and they work in like a fintech company, and
okay.
their company is now requiring them to go back in the office 3 days a week. Now I've been going to the office 3 days a week for a while
Right.
now, so I have adapted to that. But in having that conversation with them, there was this feeling of like, I really do not want to do this. And I think, I
Facts.
mean, yeah, but when you look at, let's talk about like Amazon.
Yeah.
Amazon did that, and now people are complaining about company culture.
Yep.
People are leaving the company. So I feel like while that rein in probably will always be around, and it is something that some people will just accept because, again, I need that paycheck every other
Mm-hmm.
week.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, rent is high.
Right.
But I think that calls into question, what type of company that is and the quality of the people that will be there later, if you get what I'm saying,
I
because
get what you're
it's a
saying
turn off.
perfectly. But another millennial perspective, you got to recognize when your ideology is on the fringes, on the
Mm,
margins.
that's true.
Black people, period, are on the fringes and on the margins. If you live on a coast of America, the Northeast, the West Coast, you're on the fringes of America in terms of your ideology. Our mindsets don't dictate the masses. We are
Hmm.
a small amount of what we think is common sense, but so
Common
I,
sense ain't common.
it ain't. So I say that to say that when it comes to decision making, it's going to be based on the masses. And most
Mm,
people, like I mentioned, how I'm able to walk through the world as my own person, most people wouldn't feel comfortable doing that because groupthink is a lot safer.
that's true.
And just a quick example of what groupthink is: me, you, and three other people could be talking about how we could be Amazon employees. We can say, "Yo, I don't want to go back to work. I don't want to go back to the office 5 times a week." All five of us are in agreement. You know what? I decide I'm gonna talk to my manager. What can we work out? And then you all are like, bet, let's see what we can do. When it comes time to have the conversation, at best, one other person gonna show up. Because sticking out and being different is unsafe. Now you're a target. Like if you're not confident, you're a target. Now you're thinking about how will I, what is it okay if I'm different? And if that's who you are, then that's not going to bother you. But a lot of people don't know how to walk through the world as their own human. They walk through the world based on the rules that have been given to them.
This is a valid point.
Yeah.
And
I
oh,
mean,
life is
but
so hard.
yeah, the decisions that need to be made, and it's crazy how we got from just a simple conversation about code switching to talking about who makes the decisions for you. But I think a lot of this is about acceptance.
Mm,
The root
say
of it is
more.
acceptance. So people, like I said, assimilate based on where they know you'll get the most success. For you, you are from Alabama, you live in the DMV. If you were someone who wasn't confident in yourself, you would begin to see what the girls in DC are wearing and just do that and begin to, but just hear me out, and begin to fit in, right? The person that the you that I know won't do that, and you're proud of where you're from. So you're not looking to shed who you are to be accepted where you are now. You're bringing who you are with you to the new place.
Right.
Whereas, you know what I mean? And I think that's an admirable uh, trait. Whereas, and you'll be accepted because of who you are, not because of what you're wearing or what you're saying. Some people will be ashamed of where they come from
Mm,
and how they speak, or how and they'll shed that for the acceptance of the power state,
And
the
that's the
work.
ultimate code switch right there.
And that's what you were talking about. People completely they wear a costume and they don't even know who they are because they're ashamed of where they come from.
If only we could just all be accepted, I think. But in today's times, especially, it's just impossible,
I mean,
unfortunately.
yeah, yeah. Now another question: do you think that code switching is a limitation, or is it something that you just add to your bag of amazing attributes?
This is a good question. I don't I'm in the in between
Okay,
state. I
because it's a powerful tool.
Yes, but again, I think it just goes back to the fact that it's a powerful tool to have, but it is just an unfortunate tool that we have to use.
Mm,
So I, I think it can be both. And
okay.
I'll explain a little bit why. So I think it's a limitation because, again, if I have to think about every day that I need to change my dialect and do all these various things, that is limiting my ability possibly to communicate, possibly to perform. I mean, it
Hmm.
can limit my ability to do a whole bunch of other things because I'm so worried on how other people are perceiving me.
Right.
However, on the counter end, if you are good at code switching and you can code switch so much to the point where you may be relatable or understandable to multiple groups of people, that most often will work in your favor. Now, some people may already just naturally have that built in, like they just are relatable and understandable to the masses.
Right.
But you know, I just really think it could be either or depending on how it affects you and how well you use it.
That's a really great explanation. I am in the I'm on the side of it is an amazing attribute to have in this addition to your bag.
Okay.
My assumption, this is not my assumption is going to be what I think. It's not going to be widely accepted. I think that the people most people that code switch are using it as a means to get what they need and
This is true.
not as a means of to stripping who they are, right? Like I there are some people who I thought were code switching, and it's like, oh no, you're actually a cornball in general. Like you live in the cob, like that's just who you are.
Live in the cob.
Just live there. But
Wow.
there are other people who are like, oh, you're way cooler than I thought, right? Because what how you present on these Teams meetings and these Zoom meetings is like completely different than I would have imagined,
Right.
right? And you don't get the chance to see that till you're in real life or you're at a conference and things, and you're like, oh, I would have never expected those people. I'm like, you know what you're doing. You're using this as a tool in order to get what you want. I can probably have a drink with you, and I can also work with you because you are fluent in the language of your company.
Mm,
And I think the limitation is the minority where the people who are limited by their ability to be themselves, I think is a minority. I might be naive in that, but I think that most people are using it as a tool to add to the toolbox of skills you need to survive corporate.
I think we need to take back code switching. I
Just,
think
just
like reclaim it.
okay.
In the way that you just said. And again, I think it is still difficult because people will want you to act or say certain things, but to the point where you talked about, how so and so is doing this on the meeting, but in real life, like they fire, they cool.
Hmm.
I think we need to start reclaiming it in that way to where, when I'm doing this certain thing, maybe I do need to change it up a smidget, not too much,
Mm.
not too much. That's the quote of the episode, not too much. But you know, I'm able to add a little razzle dazzle on top of who I am to appeal to various groups
Mm.
of people or stakeholders or executives or whatever the heck it may be. But at the same time, inherently at the core, I know who I am and I'm still that person. And when I, am done with the meeting, I'm who I am at the end of the day, and that's what I'm known for. But I'm also known for giving good presentations in the way that, again, is professional. And so I just think we need to reclaim the term. And
I got it. I got it.
yeah, and how you spoke about, hopefully the minority of people feel it as a limitation. I still do think that I hope it is the minority, but to the point, there are certain groups of people who just are uncomfortable,
Yeah.
and have to code switch. But I think in a perfect world, I think we reclaim the term to be something that we can use in corporate America to, like you said, get what we want.
Let's talk about reclaiming, because this is a great, great point. Maybe if we looked at the job, our company, right? Like church.
Okay, wait a minute.
Walk with me.
All
Walk
right,
with me.
let's go on a journey.
No one who has to go to a Baptist church is looking at the way they show up to church on Sunday as a limitation to who they are throughout the rest of the week.
Mm.
When you go to this place, you have to be dressed a certain way, because it's not only acceptance, it's respect.
Heavy on the Baptist church, though.
Right. When you show up, it's not just for you. It's not just for your parents. It's for granny's friends, the pastor, the choir. So you showing up, and you might only wear a suit on Sundays. You might only have suits for church, and that's okay. You can't show up on Sunday how you do on Tuesday. And I use this as a reclaiming space, because we don't look at how you dress for church as a code switch. It's just appropriate for
the setting.
Right? So maybe if we, as Black folks, specifically the ones that we're talking about, looked at code switching as, oh no, I just have to do this in order to get what I need. But that's just part of the checklist, right? I show up on time. I speak the corporate language. I communicate with people. I network, and then that's a part of my toolkit. That's my bag of how I operate in the office. But as soon as 5 o'clock hits, my tie may loosen, and I'm back to me. I can take I'm Clark Kent again. I don't have to be Superman. So maybe we reclaim the corporate space and code switching as we look at dressing for church on Sunday.
I like that. And I think that's a lot of people who are listening will find that relatable. Because I definitely like that analogy, because I'm thinking about how I used to walk into the Baptist church and everybody got their hats on, with they
Auntie only wear hats on Sundays.
Only wear a hat on Sunday. Ain't never seen her wear a hat. Definitely never seen her wear a baseball cap. Never seen her wear any other type of hat than that.
She's not going to Walmart with that hat. She's not going to Walmart with that hat.
And so I think that analogy will really resonate, hopefully, with our audience, because that's an experience that I've had that definitely it opened my eyes to the point that we're trying to get across.
Can I double down one more time?
Yeah.
Can I speak to our Greek brothers and sisters?
Skippy, go ahead.
So, for those who don't know, I'm a member of Kappa Alpha Psi Fraternity Incorporated. I'm a noob, right? You're not going to catch me shimmying in the supermarket.
Please, oh my God.
But and I use this as an example because I've been Greeky. I haven't been Greeky my whole life. Like, I've been a Kappa for a long time. Kappa is me. Like, I'm a noob every single day.
Yeah,
but I don't have to wear it and do the things, and I don't have to. At a certain point, maybe like 4 years post crossing, I stopped strolling everywhere. Right?
Wait, hold on.
What?
You strolled everywhere for 4 years straight?
Like, not everywhere. I'm talking about every party. Like, there were times where I went to the parties, even if it was a college party. I didn't want to be the guy that was like leading the strolls.
We gotta break some videos at the box, Travarus, because I need to see young Travarus strolling at every party. But anyway, go back to your talk track.
To make it, man, because this is funny. Now this is I've dealt with this a few times, but when you get older, right? The people that you meet, they only meet you at that place, right?
Yeah.
And I don't mean to go higher. I just mean like they just meet you where they see you. but like you had a whole life before. Like for people who know me in Jersey to say that, like they'll be like, yeah, yes, he led the strolls. Like he was, yeah, that was
I need to
me.
see a video. Did y'all have
I'll
video
show
of
you
that yet?
something. Good one.
Sorry.
We did.
I know.
Resolution wasn't as great,
Yeah,
but
it's
we had
probably a
it.
little grainy, but
But going back to the Greek analogy, um, omegas aren't, they're not, at ShopRite or Food Lion doing a split, throwing hooks.
I hope not.
There's a time and place for all of it. And I think the people who we look at as being too Greek all the time, you're doing things in place that you don't need to be
Yeah,
doing
like
it.
stop. Yeah,
Yeah,
stop.
you know what I
No.
mean? Or if you're chanting, you know when to stop the chant because it's excessive. Like
Yes.
I think this same level of decorum that we exhibit as Greek people with sense speaks to code switching. And the same reason there's a nuke and then there's a kappa, right? The same thing there's an omega, then there's a Q. You have these different faces that you wear because the time calls for it. It's appropriate.
Mm,
And I think that when we boil this down, I think we've did a great job of distilling what code switching is. I think code switching is a powerful tool. It's a corporate language, but it's also about appropriation.
yes.
Being
When is the right
appropriate.
time to say and do and act a certain way?
Right, right. And I think maybe as we continue to elaborate on this, it makes it less sellouty,
Yeah.
right? Like that's not a word, but it makes you feel like you're less of a sellout when we distill it into these bullet points of adaptability, uh, corporate language, being appropriate. But as I always say, this podcast is not for those who feel like code switching is your primary language or that you feel
Yes.
like you don't want to be black.
And but Travaris, if they are in that spot, hopefully through this episode as well as some of the other episodes, you can come to a point where you get out of that. Let's be
Nah,
accepting. Okay.
nah.
Oh Lord. Lord Jesus. Okay.
You can listen, but like apply too,
Well,
fam.
yeah, the goal is for them to listen and learn and then apply.
All right.
This is
I,
about knowledge
I
sharing.
I mean, I really be wanting to be inclusive. Like I really want,
Travaris
but
just don't.
the community, like if Taylor, if you and your homegirls had this girl that was just a flip flop of personality, and you just like, who invited her?
Whose friend
That's
is
the
this?
that's the person who that's the person who doesn't know who they are listening to this podcast. When we
Okay.
begin to have our community activations, and they're just like, look, I'm learning and I'm listening. I am someone who actively code switches, and sometimes it compromises who I think I am. Some part of us gonna be like, oh, but the other part is like, all right, you might not. This might not be the community for you yet. Come back when you find out who you
Yeah.
are.
So listen, learn, reflect, apply, come back.
Okay, I can take that. I can take that.
Goodness, you just cutting out part of the. Okay. Anyway, next.
As we always do, want to make sure we end this on positive notes, and we're going to get into our amazing tips with Taylor.
Tips with Taylor. So this week we were talking about code switching and all of the things. And I was thinking, and I'm like, what tip can I provide you all with this week? And so I came to the point of talking about how it's important to document things. So let's say you are code switching and maybe it's not going so well, or maybe you don't know how to properly communicate some of the impact you've made at your job or something of the sort. I think this is why it's important to create a brag book for yourself. So, a brag book is where every week, really every other day, you really should be writing down what you have accomplished. So, one thing that I do is that every week I write down all the projects that I'm working on, what is the progress I have made on them, who these projects have impacted, what will be the outcome of this. And I do it again I normally do it on a weekly basis, and then I compile it by quarter, because I think when you are in corporate America and you have so many things going on at the same time, it can get hard for you to document what exactly you did and what were your successes and what were your areas of opportunity. And so it may be you haven't written anything down or you haven't tracked your project for a couple months. Now you have to go back and remember, wait, like what did I do? What was the process of this? Who did I talk to? What was the outcome? And so with your brag book, you are making sure that you do this in a cadence that is regular and that will keep you up to date so that when you do get to the end of the quarter, you can say, okay, these are all of my big wins. These are all of my small wins. These are my areas of opportunity. So when you go into that meeting with your manager, where hopefully you won't be code switching, but I don't know, you can at least speak to that information in a way that is professional, and that shows that you are knowledgeable about what you have been doing. So I do mine and I have like a project tracker and Airtable, but I also keep like a brag book notes book type thing where every week I'm writing down exactly what I'm doing, what I have accomplished, and again, who it will impact. So when I go into those conversations, you can also do this at the end of your internship too. At the end of your internship, you can say, oh, I did this month one, I did this month two, I did this month three. And you can also speak to that and have the metrics of that as well. So
That's
that's amazing.
amazing.
Oh, well,
That's
thank you.
amazing.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Now, enough of me chatting. We want to hear some concise advice, Travaris. And
Okay.
someone has said their manager is 30 years older than them. And they want to know how they should navigate the generational differences between themselves and their manager.
Okay. So the first thing I would do is try to understand what is the major gripe between the difference in age, because sometimes you have a manager that has been progressive their whole lives, so they may meet you where you are and you may feel like based on their age or how they look that they won't understand. So I will first articulate what do you think is the issue with the age gap. If there indeed is an issue, then I think that the next thing that you would do, not the day after, but find ways to provide value. So an assumption that I have is that if you're 25, your manager's 35, or if you're 35 and your manager's 65, that they're not using AI as much as you are. Um, if you find that there is a gap in how you learn and operate, try to provide some of your lessons and things that you know that you use every single day to kind of coach them up, right? Because one thing that we do know is that AI and how we work with AI in the workplace is only going to increase. So if you showed them something as an example, like how to use ChatGPT or Copilot or um, Dolly, anything like that, in order to scale up and cut their time, they may be appreciative. The next thing I would say is you want to give them opportunities to share their knowledge. Similar to, this is going to sound crazy, but like if I mean, your grandmother probably is 30 years older than you. You know what I mean? 45, 40, no, Granny's probably like maybe 40, let's say 40 years older than you, right? On the low end. They've experienced some things that you never even thought about, or they've experienced some things that don't even exist anymore because people have eradicated it. Some injustices that used to be in place, especially if this manager is 30 years your senior, is a woman. Asking them how their journey to where they are now was, you'll learn about the hurdles that she had to navigate and the glass ceiling she had to break and things of that nature. So people always like to talk about themselves. So finding ways to have this person share their knowledge hopefully will shrink. So I would say articulate what the goal is, what's the issue. I would say try to provide them with some value. And the third thing I would say is to allow them to share more about their journey so you can kind of learn more about them and make them feel like you're invested in their journey.
I love that. And I love when you talked about, relating it to the grandma because that's
Hmm.
immediately what I thought of how I do those three things with my grandma. And now me and my grandma, we kind of be on the same page a little bit.
Yeah, because it's when you have a big age gap, it's really easy to just cast it off like they don't
Right.
understand, right? And I think that's what's happening with Gen Z and millennials at the
Mhm.
same time. Whereas Gen Z are thinking that millennials, for whatever reason, are just like not cool or like y'all know what it's like. How do you think that certain things are easy for you because we had to break that mold? And the same thing that y'all will be doing for Gen Alpha. Don't do that. We broke a lot of molds.
Y'all did. Y'all did.
A lot.
I'll give you that. I'll give you
A
that.
lot.
Okay. All
Um,
right.
most.
Sure.
But yeah, so all those things kind of help you to not be so different. It's mostly aligned once you begin to chat about it.
Coming together.
Yeah.
I love that.
So Taylor, do you think that we were able to adequately elaborate on how code switching can be used for good?
I do think. I think we elaborated on that, and I think we elaborated on some other topics too. And I want to go back to your church analogy. I really like that one, so I hope people have that as a good takeaway. As a hopefully we take back code switching and we can switch how we view it.
Reclaim. Also,
Yes.
I think that, and this is the last thing that I'll say. Um, I didn't know where I stood on code switching overall before this conversation.
Mm,
So the resolution that we've come to has made me like really look at code switching a little differently. I never thought
I
about it
agree.
as somebody selling out, but I looked at it as like I didn't look at it as much of a tool that can be used to your advantage as much an hour ago as I do now. So
Well, we elaborated and we're changing perspectives, and that's what Care to Elaborate is all about.
even our own.
Even
With
our
that
own.
being said, we appreciate you all listening thus far, and we'll continue to provide content to you. But until next time.